Hello and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I'm your host, Freesia Lee. Joining me as always is my husband and producer, Sam.
Hello.
Joining us this episode, we have Eddie Lo, who comes from a family of restaurateurs, many of whom opened their own Chinese restaurants after immigrating to Milwaukee in the 1980s. And today, Eddie is a teacher and chef who runs the Dumpling Dinner Party in San Francisco, where guests come to learn how to make traditional Shanghainese dumplings from scratch. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Freesia. Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm doing great. It's been a really busy. We just finished Lunar New Year last month, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a very busy Lunar New Year for at least me. So it's been good and kind of ready for the spring to see what unfolds now.
Does your business peak around Lunar New Year? Are people just like, give me all those dumplings, let's learn?
I would say for like team events, corporate events, culture groups that are within companies, they will generally find time with me during the Lunar New Year to figure out a way to introduce something like that into an employee resource group. That's what I was trying to say. So that's usually very busy with team events. I love doing those because it's a great way. Making dumplings from scratch is so meditative. It's a great way to be device free. You don't have to think, you're just working with your hands. And so usually it's teams like that, and then in between that there's a handful of folks who come for things like Valentine's Day or date nights and just some unique activity to do throughout the night.
Mm-hmm. And then again for AAPI month, I'm just plugging you ahead of time is where I'm going with this.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, also for AAPI month, I had a number of on-site corporate events, which was really, really fun. Those are also great because when I host the dumpling dinner party, it's in my own kitchen and dining space. So I can only hold 8 people at most. So in a corporate kitchen or a corporate space, I can hold up to 20, 30 people. And then we make dumplings, not from scratch though. We make them with pre-made skins. It's the same amazing pork-based stuffing that is actually my dad's recipe.
Oh.
And then we make secret sauces, which includes using a wonderful Taiwanese black bean soy sauce.
Ooh.
Which I think we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, listeners, I guess, surprise, spoiler, this is soy sauce part 2. We've tricked you. No, soy sauce part 2, but Eddie, you have a special recipe for a soy sauce dish that we're going to talk about first before we get into soy sauce at large, because I know you are also very knowledgeable in that arena. What is your dish?
Soy sauce has been part of my life ever since I was a kid. As you mentioned, if you've ever been to an immigrant-run restaurant, like a first-generation immigrant-run restaurant, and you'll see like kids in the back running around, causing havoc. I was that kid running around the back, talking to all the customers. And so what my parents had a Chinese American restaurant, and it was in the middle of Wisconsin. So they used a lot of soy sauce because that's how you can get a lot of good umami. That's how you can get a lot of good flavor. I would say for that audience, they were serving $2.99 all you could eat Chinese buffet style food. So they were dousing their food with a lot of soy sauce to bring in a lot of like salt and familiar flavors for that palate. And at home, we would get home cooked meals every day, whether it was my dad making stuff from the restaurant or I was raised by my grandma. So she's Shanghainese. She was born and raised in Shanghai. And this was pre-communism. And so then she has classic recipes from her family. So one of my favorite dishes to make, whether it's for a dinner party with friends or family or Lunar New Year, or I make it every night for the dumpling dinner party, is a dish called Hong Sao Rou. Hong Sao Rou translates Hong red, Sao braised, roe pork. And it's a soy sauce braised pork belly, slowly cooked over 4 hours using skin on pork belly. It's very similar to, if you're familiar with a French braise, an Italian braise, it's very similar to any of those other braises where you start by kind of searing the meat and then introduce your core ingredients, which are soy sauce, cinnamon, star anise, 2 of the Chinese 5 spices. And you finish it off with some Shaoxing wine. So instead of using like a red wine for a beef bourguignon braise, you're using a Shaoxing rice wine. And it's just all those wonderful flavors come together. They all mingle for 4 hours, and it comes out so delicious. If I could eat it every day, I absolutely would. That pork just kind of melts in your mouth. And using a good soy sauce, you can introduce a lot of good flavor. If you're using a not so good soy sauce, the salt dominates that flavor, and then you're just going to get something
Mm.
that's very salty.
Yeah, your grandma made this for you growing up?
This was my favorite thing that she would make growing up. She would do it in several, so in the base way to do it is with pork belly, but she'll also do it with pork butt, tipang. She'll do it with pork shoulder, just anything that's a tough piece of meat, and it'll just slowly braise down.
Okay.
I have memories of coming home from school and you're just, I mean, just imagining smelling that star
Mm.
anise and cinnamon wafting
Mhm.
through the entire house. And you know something good is happening that night because it's been, on the stovetop for 2 hours or so. And then by the time we're ready to eat, it's a total of 4 hours.
That's amazing.
I was looking at the recipe for your dish, and there is 1 carrot in there.
Ah, yes. That's my own addition. Traditionally, it's not done with carrots, but I find it adds a lot of sweetness. It's usually the biggest hit of the dish. Like that carrot just
Oh.
absorbs flavor and it gets so soft and juicy and it is out of this world. So even if you don't want to do a 4 hour braise, you can do it in the oven for 30 minutes, 425 degrees.
Mm.
Put some soy sauce, Shaoxing wine, star anise, and cinnamon and just have that roast for 30 minutes and it comes out beautifully.
Interesting. Is it like a candied yam type of?
Yeah, that's close. It's not as caramelized and not as,
Right.
intensely sweet, but it's just you can taste all five flavors there. The sweet, salty, spicy, sour, bitter,
Mm.
everything is present there because of those ingredients that you're using. So it just absorbs so well. It's a vehicle for that soy sauce.
Awesome. Good to know. I was
Yeah.
just wondering what that lonely carrot was doing.
Yeah.
Is there an Instant Pot version of this?
Everybody asks that. I've never worked with an Instapot before, or I'm afraid to. These are like new devices that are just the most advanced thing that I use is like a sous vide, I think. The
Yeah.
Instapot I have not tried, but I think my mom has done it before. I should ask her, but I think they've
Okay.
done it before.
I'm going to need you to ask your mom.
Yeah.
And also, Eddie, they're not that new anymore.
I know. I know.
If people keep asking, perhaps the market demands an update to the recipe.
Fair. Very
Just
fair.
saying.
I will research.
Busy parents everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so to walk me through this, you grew up in a Chinese restaurant, but then you would go home and grandma was cooking this. And then restaurant food came home. Restaurant food didn't come home.
Sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. My grandma, when I was very young, she and my mom were the primary caretakers for me. And my dad, if it was a slow night, he would come home, we would get food, or I would eat at the restaurant if it was a slow night and wasn't too busy. Other nights, I would be at home with grandma and she would make that. Other days I would be coming home from school, from the YMCA, after school care and coming home to that kind of smell.
Mm-hmm.
It just really was whatever the day held, and I appreciate now so much more kind of the what my dad was doing in that restaurant space because some days I wouldn't see him until
Mm.
the next morning because I now I know, of course, that he was there all night cleaning up, prepping for the next day. And then other days, of course, he was not as busy, so he could spend time with us. But that was generally the reason why I would be having grandma's food versus food that dad would be cooking, which would be a Cantonese food. He was born and raised in Hong Kong, so there was two different sides of that. Yeah.
Were you aware of that at the time?
Oh no.
That like their food was different and that
So growing up, because we had the restaurant, we'd always have home cooked meals, and we would always, eat at the dining table together, whether it was at home or in the restaurant. I didn't have my first real hamburger until I got to college here in Berkeley. And I have a good friend
Wow.
who has a picture of that moment that I tried my first hamburger. So, did I know that this was special and different food and unique? No, I thought in my mind, my whole world was just this is Chinese food and this is food. Like, this is what food is. So, it was really interesting to kind of get exposed to fine dining and burgers as soon as I went to school.
Okay, I'm going to be real honest. I really want to ask about this first hamburger moment, but also I want to know, like, how did you go that long? I mean, I guess because I am a child who was raised on TV. Like, how did you go that long being like, this food is all food? And like what was it like going to school and seeing other people's lunches? Like I guess I'm just wondering, I believe you entirely, but the ways in which we are inundated with food in
Yeah.
every other direction, like how you sort of kept this little bubble that just sounds so charming.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that, not every meal was a healthy meal. When growing up, especially in Wisconsin, I have memories of eating Lunchables growing up in elementary
Okay.
school.
Okay.
Okay.
When I came to, so we moved out to California when I was 11. We moved to Pasadena at first. So I went from being like the only Asian kid in class to one of many, many, many. And
Mm.
so then it got even more normalized where people were bringing home lunches, sandwiches that they were getting packed. There was no kind of like going out to eat culture.
Hmm.
And then growing up with being in Orange County after that, we would go out to eat and we would just eat Chinese food every weekend. So if it was a meal out, it was Chinese food. If it was a night in, it was mom or dad's cooking. And I came to Berkeley, left home for the first time, and I have a godmother who is in the San Carlos, and she doesn't have kids. So she and her husband would take me out, and they would always ask me, "Where would you like to eat?" And I would say Chinese food. And if they eventually got sick of it, they said, "We can't do Chinese food anymore. We're done with that.
Wow.
We're going to take you to Olivetto's. It closed in Rockridge, right?" But that was my first time really getting exposed to food that was not Chinese food. And
Mm.
then then you meet other people, you meet other friends. And I have a good friend who, yeah, she was like, "You got to get you your first burger," and it was at Barney's in Oakland, and so it was a gourmet
Yeah,
burger.
it's a
It
great
was like a
burger.
Nice.
$13, $14 at the time,
Yeah.
and
It's like 22 now,
oh god,
probably.
yeah. But that was an amazing introduction to a burger. But she does have a video of me, first of all, eating it upside down, so I flipped it over and bit into it. Didn't know kind of how to work with it. And it's on my Facebook page somewhere
Oh
long
my
from long, long
God.
ago. Yeah.
You're like, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Oh, this is so endearing. You flipped over your burger. Oh, Eddie.
So after all those experiences, I feel like I'm making up for lost time. The first, 18 years of my life where I
Hmm.
hadn't had other kinds of food. So now, I do try to travel the world so much to different cultures, different kinds of foods, and see the world through the lens of food, see culture through the lens of food. And that's,
Hmm.
I think, really important for me now, as I've been cooking more.
What was it like, bite one, hamburger one, to the, I don't know, the first like few months, couple of years? Like, what was that like for you? Was it like a slow drip into new foods, or were you just like, now I need to know everything? I need
It
to eat
was,
it all.
I need to eat it all. I need to know
Mm.
everything. I remember getting, shortly after that, trying Ethiopian food for the first time and working with
Mm.
my hands to pick up the food. That was so delicious, getting just the fermented flavors. Berkeley is a great food city to kind of be a college town, right? And so there was just a diversity of foods, both Asian and non-Asian. So
Mm.
even to get exposed to growing up, we didn't eat spice. Cantonese and Shanghainese flavor profiles are not spicy. So
Hmm.
going to, the first time you try in like a Sichuan restaurant or a Thai restaurant and getting
Mhm.
some intense spice,
Mhm.
I have a memory of that too, just kind of not knowing how to handle my spice and dousing it with water and then going to the bathroom and washing my face off
Oh
because
no.
it was so spicy.
Oh
So yeah, I leaned in. I was like, let me try anything and everything. When I go travel, I will challenge a host or a chef that I'm working with. Like, let's go to the street food market and throw the weirdest stuff at me
Mm.
because I want to experience it. We did that in Vietnam just a couple of years ago, and that was also a really fun way to deep dive into a culture and then understand flavor.
Mm.
no.
Nice.
Now that you know what you know about food, how do you feel about the first 18 years?
I still feel, well, before we moved to Orange County, or maybe even the change, the shifting of the American food culture, we did not think that much about ingredients or about where the food came from or how it was processed. So, as I mentioned, eating Lunchables every day. My
Mm.
mom, see, today, she looks back, she says, I hate that I did that. But it was convenient and it was fast and it was something
Hmm.
that they had to do.
Mhm.
And so, kind of growing up that way, eating those foods and being exposed to Chinese food that's home cooked every single day and valuing sitting down together and having a meal together every meal, regardless of how busy everybody was. When I reflect on that now, I think that was such a privilege and a good way to be exposed to food.
Mm.
I don't have a regret of, I mean, I'm going back to visit Wisconsin and seeing, what we could have eaten, frozen custard,
Mm.
cheese curd, McDonald's, Arby's, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think they made a great conscientious choice of feeding us stuff that they knew what it was. And I think, by being exposed later on to fine dining and being exposed later on to other types of food just gives that better, even more sense of appreciation and wanting that curiosity to want to learn more about their food.
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, I guess more so college when you were starting these things, but I guess even maybe younger, like having friends who were eating something different, or was it ever an issue? Was anyone ever like, what do you mean you've never had this? Or sort of,
Yeah, I remember in high school on the tennis team, everyone would kind of go out to like In and Out and Soup Plantation and or, just like these
soup
buffets and stuff.
plantation.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
They would go out to these restaurants for lunch. And I was, yeah, I never thought about it at the time, but I do think now, like, I think I intentionally just chose not to go because I had lunch already
Mm.
prepared. I had lunch already prepared. So I was like, well, why would I waste my lunch? My mom's already made me lunch. I'm not going to go get a burger. But I guess now that I look back, yeah, those were great social moments that I definitely missed out on. And I never really thought about, oh, they're eating burgers and I don't like burgers or afraid of burgers. I've never tried it before. It was just more so like I have food already and I don't need to join them. And then other times, we would be just having lunch and I guess people would get like I remember in middle school people would get like cup of noodles, the instant ramen. People would get like little burgers and I just had my little sandwich or Lunchables and I was happy with it.
Hmm.
You don't long for something that you don't know what you're missing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
If I knew what an In-N-Out hamburger tasted like, or how those French fries were, I would, I'd probably be like, yeah, of course I'm gonna go.
Hmm.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I could long for things I've never had. Millions of dollars. Are you listening out
Yeah.
there? Just saying. No, going back to your dish, how did you learn to make it?
So I was never really taught cooking growing up. In fact, to do these dumplings, we tried. My mom tried, but I think it takes a good teacher to also, it takes a good teacher and a good student to come together and really understand the intricacies. So, when she was teaching me how to fold the pleats, she would just be like, I would ask questions. She would just look, can't you see what I'm doing? Just do what
Mm,
I'm doing.
mm-hmm.
And it's very tight and very small. So generally those would end up in arguments and give up and we'd move on. And the first time that I ever cooked on my own was like summer of junior year in college. And I remember being on Skype with my mom trying to do a fried rice. And she was walking me through that of how to just stir fry everything together and how to put things together. So she never really taught. My grandma never really mentioned things. Dad, neither. And it wasn't until I got to Google, and this was in my early 20s. They had and have these cooking classes, but back then they were much more intricate and involved. So they had these cooking classes that you could take for 6 weeks. Every week you would go in for 1.5 hours, 2 hours to do an intensive, full-on culinary experience,
Mm.
knife skills, kitchen skills, and so forth. And the instructor, the woman who started it all, is now my mentor, my friend. Her name is Olivia Wu, and she has been in the Bay Area since I believe the early '90s. And before that, she was in Chicago, and before that, she was in Thailand, and before that, she was born and raised in Shanghai. So we kind of hit it off because of my background and love of food and wanting to learn more about how to cook and how to put together flavors and how to create some of the dishes that I loved eating up until that point. And so, one of the dishes that is her signature dish and her recipes that she loves to play with, because it very well represents five core flavors that she talks about in her class, is the Hong Sao Rou. And
Oh.
so, while it brings me to the memories of my grandma, it is based on Chef Liv's recipe. She was the first person who taught me how to make it. And then ever
Oh.
since then,
Hmm.
I've turned it into my own, of course, but it was actually because of her that I've been able to make it today.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Knowing where this conversation is about to go, this feels like a very
Yeah.
serendipitous meeting for you.
Yes.
And to make that pivot, Chef Liv is
Mhm.
also the Liv behind soy sauce.
Live, cook, eat. Correct.
That's right. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So she is a wonderful human, wonderful person, very generous, very open and kind. And I was so fortunate for her to kind of pick me out of a class and want to get to know me more. And we've been friends, ever since for about 10 years now. And so after she retired from the teaching kitchens at Google, so she was an executive chef at Google. She was hired in to open a number of the cafes that fed the Googlers there. And then she had the opportunity to do one of her dreams, which was to open a teaching kitchen and teach the way that she thinks food should be taught. And the way that she teaches is all about flavors and sweet, salty, spicy, sour, bitter, and umami. So we talk a lot about umami in that class. And at the time, she was working with the manufacturers, the artisans who make the soy sauce today that she white labels. And they were bringing in gallons and kegs worth, I've heard, of soy sauce from Taiwan for the Google kitchens to use.
Mm.
Hmm.
So they were using that soy sauce for many years. And then, yeah, when she left, she wanted to figure out something else to do. She wasn't ready to retire. And so she continued to teach and out of her own kitchen in Moss Beach. And I had the opportunity and privilege to be an assistant teacher and to co teach with her. And we started talking about umami. We started talking about flavors and how to introduce more flavor to a American palate. Once I tasted the soy sauce, I was blown away because it has so much complexity and depth to it. But the soy sauces that you and I might be used to, Kikkoman, Trader Joe's, the premium labels that you'll see at an Asian supermarket, they're incredibly salty. And so I was blown away by the fact how complex soy sauce can be
Mhm.
and how less salty it can be too, without, compromising the flavor or how it's used as an ingredient. And so we started talking. We started talking about how we can bring that soy sauce to the market. And in about 2.5 years ago, we started talking to the importers and the artisans who made it.
Hmm.
And because they knew her from the Google days and they remembered how much she purchased from them, I think that that was a really great in for her to kind of say, let's see what we can do to bring this to the masses, especially in the Bay Area right now.
Hmm.
So that's sort of how we started thinking about it. And then, one of the best pieces of advice that my therapist ever gave me was I met her at Google and she left Google to start her own private practice, which was scary. And for me to start my own business with both the dumplings and soy sauce, it was scary at first, but the best advice that I got was just close your eyes and do it because you have all the skills inside of you that you know that will help and support you to do what you want to do and be successful. So we just sort of went with it. We said, okay, let's put together a label. We didn't do, testing. We didn't spend a ton of money on working with a designer or something. And we just kind of went with it. And we told the manufacturers, the artisans, we'd like to order 1,000 bottles and see kind of what happens to that. And they were willing to work with us to put on a custom bottle. And we started sharing it with people and telling people about it. And it resonated with a lot of people, especially when we started telling the story about how the soy sauce is made, what's interesting about it. I mentioned that it's a black soybean soy sauce. So that's very unique to a Taiwanese soy sauce.
Mm.
And once people start getting that value proposition, that education around the soy sauce, it really started taking off. And then now we sell it in retail stores, and then I sell it during my dumpling class, and I use it during my dumpling class. So
Hmm.
it actually is a really great way for people to experience what soy sauce can do to otherwise, tasteless proteins or tasteless sauces.
Hmm. So I'll say this episode is not sponsored.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because I think on past episodes, and Sam, you're in this with me just as much. Like I have said that we have begun our fancy soy sauce era. Like we are not a Kiko Man only household anymore. And on the end of our last episode, I sort of suggested to our listeners that they just go out and do like a soy sauce tasting, like get a bunch of brands, do a tasting, see how that goes.
Yeah.
And I said that because when I first met you, that is what you did to me. You said, here,
Yeah.
try these. And it was such a mind-blowing experience because I was like, I sort of wandered up to your table and I was like, no, what's going on here? Soy sauce. Okay, whatever. And then I tasted, you gave me, I think, 2 of yours and then the Kikoman. And I was like, oh, sorry, Kikoman. Oh, God, if you want to sponsor us someday, we still use you too for other things. But it was so different. And I didn't realize soy sauce could taste like that. I didn't think about the complexities of the flavor. One of them I just wanted to drink as a soup, if I'm honest.
Yeah. And that experience that you had is the umami that blew my mind when I first tasted that soy sauce with Chef Liv. I think it kind of ties back to this idea of being curious about food and wanting to just deep dive into specific foods around the world and understanding culture through the lens of food. You could do this with anything and a lot of people I'm sure who listen here do go through different olive oils, go through different chili sauces, even drinks, wines, tequilas, going to the source and deep diving and really understanding what goes into your food or into the sauce that you're using makes such a big difference when it comes to not only your health but then how you cook and what you eat. And so for me, it's been a lot about helping people see that soy sauce shouldn't be just 960 milligrams of salt per tablespoon is what Kikkoman is, right? Because that's how flavor is introduced in cheaper soy sauce, right?
Mhm.
You speed up the fermentation and you douse it with a lot of sauce. When I went to Japan a couple years ago, and this was before we started doing soy sauce, I visited Yuasa, which is known as the birthplace of Japanese soy sauce, and they've been brewing for thousands of years. And to kind of see the process of it, we've seen it on for people who've seen Chef's Table, I believe they do a whole episode, or Salt Fat Acid Heat has a whole episode on soy sauce. So you could see how soy sauce is made, but to be able to appreciate the taste and the flavor is completely different. So when I went, I of course saw the whole thing about how they're making it and what makes the Japanese soy sauce, but to taste the difference, and they were also using black soybeans to taste why a black soybean soy sauce makes such a big difference in the fermentation process, that kind of already opened up my mind a lot to the ingredient itself. And I encourage everyone who I talk to about this to do the same when they travel. When you're in Italy, go to the heart of Parma to learn about Parmigiano Reggiano, or go to go to tequila when you're in Puerto Vallarta or something. Take the trip to tequila to learn about why tequila can be good and why it can be bad because of the additives that are used. And it's the same thing with soy sauce.
That's really amazing. I'm just literally thinking about eating things that we eat soy sauce with now and how we are
Yeah.
low on dumplings and we need to remedy that. Selfishly, yes, this is me doing a shopping list in my mind and also like what we need to stock up on. But at the same time, like when we discovered your soy sauce and when I like brought it home and I told Sam, I was like, hey, I bought this soy sauce that costs more than our normal soy sauce does. But it's worth it and I'm very excited about it. Like he also got on board. And then I feel like Sam, I don't know, maybe this was just me, but like I feel like I went through a phase where I was like, yeah, Trader Joe's dumplings, I don't care. And then we're going to use the good soy sauce. And it was magical. And then I was just like, let's have that for dinner. And then we introduced it to our kids. And then our oldest was like, oh no, can I have the good one? And I was like, oh, you can. And also, what have we done? Oh.
Well, kind of back to that idea of when I was talking about Lunchables and processed foods and not knowing at the time, my parents not knowing at the time, there is something to be said about spending a little more to get a good quality ingredient, whether it's a sauce, whether it's a protein, and that's why everyone encourages everybody to go to a farmer's market, know where your meat's coming from, know how it's raised, right?
Hmm.
Trace that. And I think that makes sense in soy sauces as well. When I got to visit the artisans this last December in Taiwan, just to see the care and the amount of experimentation that they've done to perfect their soy sauce and to use the best quality ingredients for their soy sauce, it brings a really solid appreciation for me to why you pay a premium for something that is cleaner, that is healthier for you, and that is a better tasting product. The price is not always the rule of thumb. I think there's a lot of sauces on the market or foods generally on the market, whether it's at a grocery store and at a restaurant, that are priced quite high for the sake of being priced high.
Hmm.
But I think once you start deep diving, you understand, what's going into your food. It makes a huge difference. And so, yeah, I think it's good to expose kids to
Mhm.
using something that is going to be good for your body and it doesn't just taste good because it's full of salt or sugar or whatever additive.
I had a very visceral reaction to the soy sauce when Friedrich told me to try it because it reminded me of a taste that I forgot about.
Oh.
My mom did most of the cooking when I was a kid, and she had like a special soy sauce that she would use, and it's like similar tasting to the finishing soy,
Mm.
almost exactly the same. Like it reminded me of that taste, and she would only pull it out for, special occasions or like
Ah.
something fancy, and it just like brought me back, and it was like really amazing. And like if I want something salty, I'll just use, like a Kiko Mountain or something like that.
Yeah.
But if I want something tasty and interesting, I use that finishing soy.
Did you ask for what it was?
I didn't ask her what it
Mm.
was, but it was like I just remember she like kept it separate from the regular soy sauce. It was like
That's what we do.
it was like almost kind of hidden, like under the kitchen sink. Like
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, drops at a time then.
yeah. I put it on my oatmeal in the morning
Wow.
for like a savory oatmeal. Yeah,
Oh, I love
it's
that.
delicious.
I love that. In fact, something that we've experimented with just our soy sauces is playing with foods that you wouldn't think soy sauce could or should be used on.
Hmm.
But it all goes back to the idea of umami.
Hmm.
In Chinese, it would be xian wei, right? Xian, it's this beautiful intersection of flavors from like earth and sea. And
Hmm.
it's this idea of just adding something that's delicious. So, we have recipes on using it in a classic Italian red sauce and just
Hmm.
introducing a little bit of umami. We just developed one on soy sauce infused chocolate chip cookies. I don't know if you guys got to try that at the last
Hmm.
Asian Art Museum
We
fair,
did.
but yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. So using no salt,
Hmm.
using less sugar, and
Hmm.
introducing umami through soy sauce, it's just an unexpected way to do it. And I love that you put it over your oatmeal because that's the same idea of just like, let's add
Yeah.
a little umami into it,
Hmm.
and it'll change the whole profile of the dish. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not really a sweets person, and I'm trying to watch my sugars. so, so I was like, I'll try, this tasty soy sauce, and
Yeah.
perfect.
Also, it's cheaper than eating eggs in the morning anymore.
Currently, yeah.
So even a premium soy sauce is cheaper than a dozen eggs at this
Dozen
point.
eggs.
How do you sustain this, Eddie? Like, you are so engaged and like so in love with the food and the soy sauce. What keeps you going in this?
For me, well, first, for the dumplings that I do every night, so I'll have in my kitchen, I'll have 8 people. It's usually four random couples or random two, group of two who will come together. And I've always loved teaching. Ever since I was a kid, I would pretend to be like a teacher and teach my parents stuff. And so I've always wanted to do that. And I think every time I've done this for almost 3 years and had over 3,000 people come through, every time that I do this, I still learn something new, whether it's how to communicate, right? Seeing what clicks for people to make their moves on how to pleat, or even just talking about flavor and soy sauce. So every time I do this every night, I still get energized and engaged. I think some people who teach or act, they'll say, I have to be on, so I have to put on a persona. It
Mm.
never really feels like a persona. It's more just having this conversation and education. And then when I talk about soy sauces with other people, whether it's, chefs at restaurants who use the soy sauce or, customers who are tasting it, I think it's just so fun to see, just like you both had that moment click of, wow, this is umami and this is what soy sauce can do and should taste like. I think even more so, it's back to that idea of just curiosity. I don't think a lot of people would spend their vacations taking a day or two to go visit like a soy sauce factory or a tequila factory.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's just fascinating. Well, I don't know. I take that back. I think people love watching it on Netflix and on TV shows, right? Like watching Stanley Tucci go to these places and deep dive, or Anthony Bourdain and going to try all these weird foods. I think I channel that same kind of curiosity for it, and part of it is for me to be able to tell those stories back. So when people do want to hear about how a soy sauce is made and why this is so interesting and why it tastes so good, I'm able to share that. And so that's really what I think continues to drive me, which is the sharing, the storytelling, and inspiring people to use better ingredients. Some nights I'll have similar conversations. Everyone always asks at the dinner, like, "Oh, where's your favorite dumpling restaurant? Or where's your favorite restaurant in the city?"
Mm.
And I think it's challenging sometimes for me to answer that because not every restaurant, I mean, there's some wonderful chefs in the city, of course, who value using good quality ingredients, sourcing from farms that are local and sustainable. But there's other restaurants who are charging, the same price for, I've seen the exact same salad at Chef's Warehouse, like this, outlet store that they're serving and calling, a $20 farm to table salad. So it's hard to kind of answer that sometimes when people ask, but I think when I do think about, what kinds of restaurants I like, what kind of food I gravitate to, it really is those foods that use those good quality ingredients. And so when I can tell people about that, and I can tell people that everything we're having tonight comes from local farms, comes from artisans that are based out of Taiwan, that's also another way of sharing. That's also another way of trying to change people's mind on what Chinese food should be. I mentioned my parents had that 2.99 all you could eat Chinese buffet in Wisconsin. There's been a lot written about this, but Chinese food has always felt like this commodity or this cheaper
Mm-hmm.
food.
Mm-hmm.
You're never willing to pay extra for it. And I think places like Mama Hoo Hoo and Mr. Juice, they're doing real good work to bring in good quality, from scratch sauces and ingredients and showing a larger public audience of what Chinese food,
Mm-hmm.
Asian food can and should be. And that's on a smaller scale for me with soy sauce, just one particular ingredient, but using that and sharing that with people. So all of that combined kind of gives me that drive to keep going every day doing this.
I love it. Going back to your parents' restaurant and your parents in particular,
Yeah.
what do they think about what you do now?
It was fascinating. Well, ever since I was younger, I was like, I want to open a restaurant. I want to do this. And I worked with two folks to help open Shuggy's restaurant in the Mission. It's a pizza restaurant. And I thought, this would be a good way to kind of learn about how a restaurant works. And once I started seeing it, I was like, okay, maybe this is not what I want to do. I don't want to be in the kitchen from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. every day and barely skating by on. So when I thought about starting the dumpling dinner party, it was a mix of a lot of things. I had done a bunch of travel. I had done some cooking in France, cooking in Italy, and I started seeing different like chefs around the world teach. And I was for some of them they were wonderful. Others I'm like, I could do this better. And I think with Chef Liv, watching her teach was very inspirational. And then when she retired from Google, doing it in her home, so I started putting that all together, and then I started doing this dumpling dinner party. And it was, started off as like an Airbnb experience, and then it turned into
Mm.
something more.
Oh.
But when I started it, my mom in particular was like, don't ever do restaurant stuff. Don't do food stuff. You're not going to be successful. It's not going to work.
Hmm.
And I took that as, you don't have confidence in me as a person. You don't believe in me. You don't trust me. And, English is her second language, so sometimes words can get lost in translation. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, she shared very kindly that she cried every day when she was pregnant with me, working at the restaurant, walking around, struggling to make ends meet,
Mhm.
being yelled at, dealing with employees. And so that was why she didn't want that life for me. She didn't want that
Mm.
lifestyle for me. And it wasn't that she didn't believe in what I wanted to do and what I was doing. And so that was actually a really wonderful realization and a way to sort of get closer to her to understand this is where she comes from. Now that I've done it, just like I'm sure a lot of other parents who are helicoptering, now that you've done something, they're like, "Oh yeah, I that was me. I did that." Like my mom will tell people, I taught him how to do those dumplings, and now he makes all that money doing dumplings because of me.
Hmm.
But no, she's an integral part of the story. It is because of her that I am able to teach other people. I think I've perfected her way of teaching. I don't tell people just look at what I'm doing. I'm very precise, very precise about how I instruct and how I give feedback, especially. But ultimately, it comes really from her and her legacy of being an immigrant, learning how to make dumplings in Shanghai, immigrating out, having that skill, landing in Wisconsin with $20 in her pocket, and then helping my dad at his restaurant to make dumplings. And so I think that's just been such an integral part of my DNA. I'd like to think that they are proud of where this everything has gone, but I'd like to think that it's even more so a legacy thing that I'm continuing on with them. And it's really great to be able to share not only their story, but their food
Hmm.
with all these people that come through my dinner party.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Have you cooked for your parents?
Oh, yes. There was an inflection point after I started getting pretty good and doing a lot more cooking. I think now when I go home, it's generally me who's cooking. Don't get me wrong, I still love a home cooked meal from like my dad will. Yeah, I don't let him do steaks anymore, but but some of his dishes are still just incredible. He makes amazing soups.
Mm.
Actually, every time they come to visit
Mhm.
me in San Francisco, we dedicate a day to go to Chinatown, San Francisco. We'll
Mhm.
get live fish, we'll get herbs, we'll get
Mm.
like live black chicken, and bring it back and make a meal together, the three of
Ooh,
us,
wow.
just sort of at home. And so, he makes a wonderful soy sauce steamed fish, and my mom too. So she'll continue to make. We hosted a dinner party at my house. We had my godparents up, and she makes xinjiang bao, which I love how she does it. The bao dough is made by my dad, and then the pleating, the technique is done by my mom. But she rolls it out perfectly with just the thinnest edges. She folds it all so delicately. Every single one looks exactly the same, machine made. And then dad will pan fry the bottom to perfection.
Wow.
Like it, some of these restaurants I'm not going to name names, but some of these restaurants in the city where there's lines out the
You
door.
can name them after we stop recording.
Okay. But you can tell people who are making this dish that I'm describing, Xinjiang Bao, they're using machines, right? They're
Mm.
perfectly like halfway crisped. They're perfectly cylindrical, and people line out the door for them. But that's not what it should be, and that's not what you're going to get in Shanghai. So
Mm.
what they make here, or what they make for me at home, and what they make together with us, it's just such a different level. And I love still to this day eating their food. And there's still dishes that they can make that I still can't do very well.
Mhm.
And we're working on that too.
Nice.
But we do love to cook together as a family.
Mm.
Okay, but do you ever take them out for a hamburger?
Yo, yeah. Oh, another, yeah, yes, actually. And they'll also credit me for this, and I credit my godparents for it. I introduced them to fine dining. So where were we? We were in Tucson the other day. And the last time they were here was my dad's birthday. So we went to Saison.
Mm.
And they had the full service, folded your napkin, your water glass was never empty, take out
Hmm.
your chair. And they were we went to a nicer restaurant in Tucson. Wonderful food, wonderful chef. But my mom was like, this definitely doesn't have a Michelin star, does it? And because they didn't fold my napkin in time. And I was like, Mom, you didn't even, that wasn't in your vocabulary like maybe like
Oh my
10 years ago.
God.
So their palates have definitely opened up a lot. I'm very fortunate that they are very open-minded and willing to try different foods. Don't get me wrong, my dad, after took them to Californios one year before they got real big, but they took him to Californios for his birthday a long time ago. beautiful meal, amazing meal, but it was all Mexican inspired food, a lot of corn based. He came back. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm making rice." And I was like, "Why? We just had like a 10-course, 15-course meal." He's like, "Well, that's just how I was raised. I need to have rice, otherwise it's not a meal." So he will continue to kind of do that even when we go to a really nice restaurant. Bottom line is that yes, I've taken them to get burgers. Last time they came, I think we went to Goss at the
Oh,
Embarcadero.
solid.
Yeah.
Solid burger.
It's hard when you start with a gourmet burger because every other burger is like, I remember after that, I think I got it at like Five Guys or something. I was like, wait, there's no like, it's not very
Mm-hmm.
big. This is different. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then I learned, oh yeah, this is the gourmet burger and this is a fast food burger.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't eaten a fast food burger with my parents before.
That's fair.
In my mind, if they're visiting or if I'm visiting, it'd be a waste of a meal.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Time is limited.
We're coming up on time. Anything else you want to add to this, Eddie, before we do our wrap up?
I hope what what your listeners are getting to is inspiring to go out and seek the source of their foods and what makes up their food. What are you putting into your body? It doesn't have to be as complicated as flying out to Taiwan to visit an artisan, but it can be just researching, asking questions about how this is made and what goes into it and what makes it taste so good. One of the things that I like to say about the Live Cook Eat soy sauce is that the flavor of the soybeans comes through, and that's from the fermentation. In other cheaper soy sauces, flavor of salt comes through because that's how you get something to market quicker. And so I think that contrast makes a huge difference.
Eddie, this was super fun. The first time I met you, I basically accosted you and I was like, hey, you should come on my podcast. And because I knew that it would be this. I knew it would be a good time and a good conversation and that you would have a lot of very lovely and insightful things to say. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can listeners find you? Where can they buy product? Where can they book a dumpling class?
Yeah, it's all at my website, eatingwithedmund, EDMUND.com. Or on Instagram. So on Instagram, I've posted a lot of great videos from the Taiwan travels, especially. So if people are going to Taiwan or all of the travels that I do, I'll post videos about it. And it's just the same idea of these are places that I've found good quality, good ingredients, tasty, and reasonably priced. I think that's a component that I always like to throw into it. So check out the Instagram as well, Eating with Edmund. And that's where you can also pick up soy sauces. Soy sauces in the city are sold at the Asian Art Museum gift shop, China Live. We're trying to get into more places. So hopefully this gets the word out for other retailers to say yes to us. And in South Bay, it's at Sagonas and Oceana Market in Pacifica.
Nice. And I'll just plug that you will be at the Asian Art Museum the first weekend in May selling, and I'm going to guess doing the blind taste test that you have been doing that is so successful in conversion, we'll say.
Yeah. Yes. So if you want to taste some fun soy sauces, yeah, come on by.
And that market is free to the public. You don't even need a ticket to come in. Probably I'll also be there.
It's a wonderful market. They put together such a great group of people with diverse products, some really interesting stuff. And I've made some good friends at that market too. So it's a good one to check out.
Yeah, nice. Eddie, again, thank you so much for being here. This was really wonderful. Listeners, I would encourage you, again, not sponsored, but it is good soy sauce. We are on our, 5th bottle maybe, and we have gifted it. I've told other people to buy it. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said we were like huge converts, and our children like it too, so it goes even faster.
I love it.
But yeah, go pick up a bottle or, at least come by the Asian Art Museum and do the taste test just so you know for yourself. If you want to find us for any reason, you can find us at worstqualitycrab.com. You can find us on Instagram also at worstqualitycrab or email us at worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. And until next time, we will talk to everybody then. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.